Good evening, and thank you for attending. My name is Lisa Maurer, and I'll be the moderator for this evening's debate. Before we begin, please silence all phones and electronic devices. Additionally, please refrain from any interruptions to the debate as it is being recorded for on-demand viewing and post-captioning services. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the sponsor for this evening's debate. The Citizens Clean Elections Commission is the sponsor for this evening's debate. The Clean Elections Act is a campaign, finance reform, and public education measure initiated by Arizona citizens and passed by voters in 1998. The system provides clean funding for qualified participating candidates who agree to abide by the Clean Elections Act and rules. These include contribution and spending limits, foregoing special interest money, and participating in commission debates. We encourage audience questions, so make sure to utilize the note card given to you when you entered the room, write down a question, and hold it up. Our volunteers will pick up the cards and deliver them to me. If you need additional cards, just raise your hand. If you have a question for a specific candidate, please include the candidate's name on the note card. It will be considered during the second half of the debate. Now, when we get those question cards that come in, we screen the questions for clarity to eliminate duplications, speeches, or personal attacks on candidates. The debate this evening is scheduled for about an hour and 15 minutes, so we may not get to all audience questions, but we will do our best. So a little bit about the format this evening. The debate includes 1-minute opening statements. The first half of the debate begins with 2 minutes for each candidate to answer the same question. After all candidates have responded to the question, the first responding candidate will be given an additional 30 seconds, and we'll rotate which candidate responds first each time. The second half will allow a different question per candidate with 1 minute to answer, and then we'll end on 1-minute closing statements. We ask that you remain polite to all of the candidates and give them a fair and uninterrupted hearing, no matter how strongly you may agree or disagree with anything being said. Tonight's participants are Ms. Sally Ann Gonzalez, a Democratic candidate for State Senator, District Number 3, and Clean Elections participant. Ms. Betty Villegas, a Democratic candidate for State Senator, District Number 3, and Clean Elections participant. Senator Olivia Quijero Bedford, a Democratic candidate for State Representative, District Number 3, and Clean Elections participant. Mr. Andres Cano, a Democratic candidate for State Representative, District Number 3. The order in which the candidates will speak has been determined by alphabetical order by last name, starting with the Senate for opening comments, and will progress from that starting point. The order for the second half will be determined by reverse alphabetical order by last name, starting with the House. Ms. Gonzalez, will you start the opening remarks, please?
For the last 7 years. I'm an experienced legislator who can navigate the issues I'm an experienced legislator who can navigate tough issues at our Capitol, and I'm a strong advocate for my constituents. As a member of the House, I have worked and will continue to fight for policies that will fully fund education, provide accessible and affordable health care for everyone, ensure that families can live in a livable wage and protect union rights in our state, address the gun violence and with common sense gun reforms that put safety first for our children and our families, to protect our environment. We need clean water and air, to promote social and gender equity.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas, your opening comments, please.
Good evening, and thank you all for spending your Friday evening with us tonight. I'm Betty Villegas, and I'm a first-time candidate for the State Senate, and any office, actually. I want to represent LD3, the district where I was born and raised and where I lived most of my life. I believe my life and work experiences have prepared me for this job. I loved my job in government because I was able to help people. I fought to hold financial institutions accountable when the foreclosure crisis was happening, and I saved a lot of people from losing their homes. That was something that was very critical during that time that I felt was important, and we created many programs and issues to get that done. I'm a mom and a grandmother, and my children all attended public schools. My husband is a retired school teacher. I'm a strong supporter.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford, your opening comments.
Thank you. I'm Olivia Cajero Bedford, and I have represented this area for 16 years. I'm very proud and honored to have been elected to serve you. I grew up in the southern part of the district and live on the west side of the district, just up the street. And I have been, I have enjoyed this work. It's very tough, especially for a Democrat. I have served on the Appropriations Committee for 14 of my 16 years. The Appropriations Committee is the most important thing that is done at the state, the budget. I have also served on Finance and Commerce Committee, anything having to do with money. And I look forward to running and winning, because I think this year we are finally going to have a Democratic governor, and it's going to make a big change. So I look forward to working with that person. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, your opening remarks.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Andres Cano, and I'm a proud progressive Democrat in the race, in the running to be your next state representative from this district. Today, I want to start off by talking about our public schools, because that is where I started my day today, speaking with teachers who are concerned about the direction of our state. The Red for Ed movement is our ability to change Arizona and to elect Democrats who will stand with our educators, with our students. It is our time to elect Democrats who will support working families, who will stand up against the corporate interests and let folks know that this district is not for sale. I am so proud to have run an impressive campaign engaging young people and mobilizing folks from all walks of life to participate in this campaign. I look forward to tonight's conversation because it is the beginning of the new chapter of Arizona, where young folks lead and where we get a seat at the decision-making table. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Ms. Alma Hernandez, a Democratic candidate for State Representative District Number 3. Ms. Hernandez, can you give us your opening comments, please?
Yes. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you for being here. My name is Alma Hernandez, and I'm very proud to be one of the candidates up here today running for one of the open seats here in our district. For far too long, we have had the same people in office in our district, and I think it's time for change. So I'm very excited to be a part of a new era of people running. I think it's time for new leadership and time for young people to take office. You know, I was born and raised on the south part of Tucson, and it was not an easy ride for me. I experienced some things that many folks in this room probably already have heard about, but I don't wish that upon any other child in my community. So that is one of the reasons why I'm running to be a state rep and to represent the people of the community that watched me grow. I received my Bachelor's of Science at the University of Arizona, as well as my Master's in Public Health, and have further public health training from Johns Hopkins. And I hope that I can count on your support. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, we will begin the portion of the debate where each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the same question. And we'll start with Ms. Villegas, and everyone will answer this same question. What are your top priorities if elected, and what would be the first piece of legislation you would want to submit?
Public education is definitely my priority, and it would be dependent on whether Invest in Ed passes or not. If it passes, then we get to figure out how to write policy regarding that proposition. And if it doesn't pass, then we have to get really busy and start finding other dedicated revenue sources to fund our public education. We keep hearing from our Republican legislators that the recession is over, the Great Recession is over, and that we're back to where we were in 2008. Well, if that's the case, then why aren't they funding our schools back at 2008? And we need to make them and hold them accountable, and we need to continue the fight that our teachers went and started so that they can go back to their classroom and teach. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Caballero Bedford, same question.
Yes, would you repeat the question, please?
Sure. What are your top priorities if elected, and what would be the first piece of legislation you would want to submit?
My top priority would be to be on appropriations again in the House. We passed a $10.4 billion budget. I mean, the budget is very complicated. And hoping that we have a Democratic governor so that we will add funding for education, because over the years, the Republicans have cut and cut and cut every year. The first year Ducey was in office, he said, I have balanced the budget. This is the first time in 10 years I have balanced the budget. What the public didn't know is that he had started cutting public education. That's how he balanced the budget. But I have a bill that is very dear to my heart that that I've done for several years, but it has not passed because of the Republican control. And that would be to the notice of claim, which is ARS 128201.0. And the notice of claim is if somebody feels that there has been wrongful death, they only have 180 days to get all the paperwork together to file a lawsuit. Well, I had a constituent whose son committed suicide after having been at a crisis center, and the family was in trauma, and she didn't know about notice of claim. And when she learned about it and then trying to get a lawyer, she didn't have the time. And as one Republican lawmaker told me, said notice of claim was put in place to protect the king from the people. And so I hope that this year, this bill would finally pass and provide some justice for families that have seen wrongful death. It was very painful. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cano.
Thank you so much. I am looking forward to being an advocate for public education and for our schools. And I think that the one way that we can invest in our schools, our teachers, our students, and our infrastructure is to, on day one of the legislature, look at all of the special tax breaks that we give to people at the very top in Arizona. Tax breaks benefiting people who are in the market for private planes. Now, if you're in the room tonight and have the luxury of being able to shop for a private plane, you're going to get that tax-free. If you own horses, you get special tax breaks. Where are the tax breaks for working people? I think it's time we put all of these exemptions on the table, add sunset dates, so that we can start focusing on the working families of this district. I grew up in public housing. I was raised by a single mom who told me to have hope. And I'll tell you, what Arizona has today is not a spending problem. We have a revenue problem, to the point where this governor wants to tell us one thing, when in reality what he means is, we signed tax pledges, we're not going to invest in the resources and the infrastructure that will move our state forward. I think it's time to say enough is enough to this governor and to this legislature and to all of the special interest groups that are now actually choosing favorites in this race. Where do you stand? Where are your values? My values are on the side of unions, of the environment, of fighting for social justice. And I think it's time for us to demand better from our state legislators. And that's my commitment on day one.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez.
So the top 3 things on my campaign are public education, healthcare, and criminal justice reform. One of the first things that I want to do once elected is really work on healthcare. You know, in Arizona and across the country, we know that healthcare cost is rising. It's a serious issue that we're seeing across, the entire country. As someone who has studied public health and has actually studied the budgets and has done a lot of work when it comes to healthcare, and as someone who has had to advocate for myself because of the healthcare issues that I have, I take healthcare very seriously, among other issues as well, but healthcare is going to be one of my top priorities. I think, and I know, most of everyone in here also can agree that when it comes to healthcare, if we are not spending money in prevention programs, we're going to be, in the long run, spending more money towards healthcare. So one of the things I would like to do is work on putting money from our budget towards prevention programs in our state. We currently don't spend enough money when it comes to prevention, if at all, when it comes to prevention. So I would really like to work on that because healthcare is a priority, especially on my campaign. And I would really, and I know that many people every time I've walked on doors, most of the people I'm talking to, they have either suffered from some sort of health issue or know someone in their family that has health issues, and their health care is becoming very expensive. So that is one of the things I would like to work on. Governor Ducey declared our state, an opioid crisis, but there's really no plan. And as someone who has worked in public health, there's different models and things we can do to actually make a change in our state. So thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you. As a former classroom teacher, education is my top priority. And I do hope that and support Invest in Education, the initiative. But in order to fully fund education, we really need to do away with the tax loopholes that we have for the rich and for big corporations. And so I would, again, sponsor a bill that would do away with actually the STO corporate taxes, because they are the worst for education. They and the vouchers for schools are the worst for education. They drain our public district schools of money, and they create more of the haves and the have-nots in our public educations. We really need to provide quality education for all children. And the other thing that is healthcare. We cannot work, play, or go to school if our health is not intact. And so I will work hard, continue to work hard to sponsor and co-sponsor bills for like the one that I co-sponsored this year and worked with Representative Cook across the aisle to do away with the working and the restrictions that we have put upon, actually that the Republicans have put upon our community in the Access program. So we need to really fund access and provide health care and accessibility for health care in all of our communities, not just here, throughout Arizona, and especially in the rural areas of Arizona.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas, you have 30 seconds to add additional thoughts.
Well, I just want to say that public education is what I'm running on, as well as many other issues, but we need to fix it before we move on to any other issues. We need to fix our public education system. And that is what I intend to do from the very moment I get there. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next question. And Ms. Cajero Bedford, you will start with your response to this. The question is, what was your last random act of kindness?
My last random act of kindness. Well, I will tell a story here because there's a reporter here from the Tucson Weekly, and I mentioned to him that we have pages from the universities that take care of us during session. They carry our laptops to the floor, take care of any of our needs that we have. But this fellow, Cameron Toring, very smart and very helpful. But he mentioned that he had gotten a scholarship to do a summer program in Washington, working for a congressman or a national elected official. And so having seen his writing, I offered to do a letter of a reference for him. And lo and behold, he was accepted to do his internship this summer for Congressman Raul Grijalva. And he was, it's going to change his career. I think, having been in Washington and seeing the politics from a different angle. And so I guess that's my kindness. It just happened. I didn't plan it. So anyway, I was very happy to help him.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, same question.
I told you earlier today about how I met with teachers to make sure that their issues are my issues. Before that, at 8 o'clock this morning, I was at a soup kitchen in South Tucson, helping me as a candidate to remember why I'm in this fight. These suits, I've been around too many of them in the last 11 months of this journey, and it was time for me to go back to the basics, seeing folks in need, serving them a meal, and frankly, setting the tone for tonight's conversation. Because what we're here for as public servants is to be there for those people that I was serving soup to this morning. I wasn't going to mention it tonight because I think we shouldn't be campaigning on good deeds. What we should be campaigning on is what's right, what's moral. But I'll mention it because I'll tell you that this is the kind of elected leader you're going to have in me. Somebody who's fighting for the people, who's with the people, and who understands that for this state to move forward, we have to address poverty, we have to address food insecurity, and oppose any attempt by this legislature, this governor, or our friends in Washington, if you want to call them that, from failing to understand the most basic needs of life: food, access to health care, access to a lending hand. That was my random act of kindness this morning.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez.
Yeah, so actually about 2 hours ago before coming here, I got on the phone with my mom. My mother is from Nogales, Sonora, and she migrated here a few years ago, but it's still very close. I grew up always on the Nogales border and here. And I started a group not too long ago called Tucson Jews for Justice. And we recently took a caravan, well actually 5 caravans of needs that the community of the migrant families seeking asylum needed. And this morning, my mother received a call from one of the nuns who's volunteering at one of the shelters, and she said that a young father, he's Guatemalan and has his 2 children with him. Well, if you know, when you come over across the border, well, when you come over from a different country into Mexico, you don't necessarily get everything you need. And the Red Cross provides some services, but not everything. And within the last 2 hours, we were able to coordinate a free surgery for him, which is really exciting because as someone who has not only done things here locally, but also in Ghana and in Panama on medical missions, volunteering my time, it was extremely exciting to be able to know that we have secured a free surgery for this young father who fled Guatemala because of the violence for his two children. So I'm very excited. I have not called the nun back to let her know, but I will let her know in a bit once we leave from here. But that was something that was really exciting for me, that we kind of planned just randomly about 2 hours ago. So that was one of the highlight of my day today, is helping someone who has cancer in his eyes and can't afford a surgery. And now he will be getting a surgery from a doctor that will go from Tucson to Nogales to do it. So that was my random kind of act of kindness today.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you. This is a hard question for me because I would agree with Mr. Cano that you are not supposed to talk about your acts of kindness. That I hear that from my pastor, my priest all the time. But often after a long day of canvassing, my husband and I usually stop at Denny's to grab a bite to eat or drink coffee. And oftentimes I invite a homeless person that hangs around at the one on Valencia off of the freeway. You know, homelessness is an issue that we need to deal with in the state, in our community of Tucson, and a lot of our homeless people are vets, and we owe all people the courtesy to look into their eyes and say hi and just accept them as they are. Homelessness is an issue that we don't plan for or want or desire, and sometimes I think society, you know, sees homelessness as something that people wish upon themselves and would like to continue doing, and a lot of time the people who are homeless just would like a happy face and somebody to say hi to. And every time we do this, you know, we are happily greeted and big smiles on their face. And so those are hopefully they will remember the act of kindness, not necessarily the meal, but the act of kindness and a smile.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas.
Earlier this week, I have a friend. I have to give a little bit of a backstory. I have one of my best friends who 4 years ago was diagnosed with breast cancer after getting tested through the mom van that happened to be located where I work. And I had told her, since you're not working, you need to just go get your exam. So she did. And lo and behold, she came out that she had breast cancer. So for 4 years ago, she lost pretty much everything. She was a caregiver and had just started getting her career back on track, and she had to stop working. So she's been homeless really for the last 4 years, going from son to daughter to my children. She's the godmother to 2 of my children, and to our house. And I had told her to apply for public housing, which she did. And she got a call finally, and she was really nervous about it. And I felt that it was my duty as her friend and as somebody that knew the system of public housing to go with her to her interview and help her fill out her paperwork. So we did that early this week, and so she's waiting any day now to get called so that she can have her own home, her own place once again. And she's very excited about it, and I was really excited for her. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford, you have 30 seconds to add additional thoughts.
I think the question would have been better for the audience to talk about, because what we do is just part of our job. For example, a number of years, and thanks to Ms. Frances Idunas, she told me about one of her customers who had had open heart surgery, and he hit the donut hole where he had to pay out of pocket. And he went to pick up his prescription, and it was like $300, $500, $600, and he didn't have the money that he needed to keep alive. So she called me, and in our jobs, we meet a lot of people, a lot of lobbyists, but I happen to know some pharmaceutical lobbyists, and I called them, and they gave me some information. I passed on to the gentleman. He was able to get his prescription.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the next question for all candidates. Mr. Cano, you will start. What would you do to protect Arizonans from the effects of climate change if you are elected to the state legislature?
My first message is that climate change is real, and I think this legislature and this governor need to recognize the reality. They need to recognize that science is science, and climate change is real. I'm proud to be endorsed by the Sierra Club, and I was very proud of that endorsement because it's a demonstration of my knowledge of this issue on the environment. We are in the Mecca of renewable energy potential. Our sun is our greatest asset, and yet we continue to look for opportunities to rely on coal. That is thinking of the past, and I want, as a legislature, to do everything in my power to put our environment, our land, our air and our water, and our renewable energies at the top of our lists, because it's not just about the economics, it's common sense. And I look forward to continuing to focus on solutions that will make us dependent on renewable sources of energy. And I'll say that for the last 10 years, I've had the opportunity to have a first row seat in local government, working for Supervisor Elias, who is a friend, a mentor, and a boss. And I will say that in that office, what I have learned is the importance of the Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan. This is a policy guide for local jurisdictions that should be implemented throughout all Arizona counties, one that acknowledges that our place is shared, that our critters and our snakes and our desert rats deserve as much protection just as much as us. It allows us to focus on land use policy so that we can protect our environment and still have economic opportunity. There is a way to do this, folks, and I am experienced, I'm trusted to lead on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, same question.
Yes, when it comes to the environment, of course, this is a really big part of the study of public health. Our goal as public health professionals is to ensure that people are safe, that they have, a safe environment to live in. And that goes back to your question of, what we will do for the environment and for climate change. I did research at the University of Arizona on asthma. Our air quality, we know here in Arizona, is not great. We can definitely do things to improve that. But one of the things I would like to work on is going back to, in the mindset of public health, is education. Educating the public and the people in our communities. Because I will tell you that many of the people in LD3 and many of the doors I have knocked on, many of the people who are everyday normal people who are not really paying attention to politics right now, those are the people we need to be focusing and working with and educating. Because if we are not educating them on what is going to happen and what can happen because of climate change, we will never be able to fix and change those mindsets. I will tell you that there are a lot of nanas and tatas out there that I've had conversations with who still don't understand really what's going on. There's a really big language barrier as well. So part of what I want to do is ensure that we are actually providing the people in our community with the tools that they need to understand the topic, because a lot of people realistically don't. We may think they do, but they don't. And that's just the harsh reality of the communities that we come from. And that's just of me doing research in our community, walking door to door, collecting, dust particles to do asthma research as well. So those are the two things that I'd like to do, is make sure that we're educating and providing the resources to the people of our community so that they understand how important this issue is.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you. I will continue the work that I have for the past 8 years at least. I currently sit on the Environmental, Natural Resources, and Energy Committee in the House. And so we have legislation and to protect our people, not only for clean air and water, but also the mining that is happening and that people want to bring to Arizona that is really harmful to our communities, especially communities of color. Up in the Navajo Reservation, the uranium mining is really been disastrous for the Navajo community. And so we need to really stand strong and prohibit those kinds of minings to be stopped, and for the cleanup of what's left behind is cleaned up, and also to stop more mining from happening that will result in the health of the people in this community. I also I was appointed to the governmental committee, advisory committee for EPA. And I am helping to develop trilateral environmental protections with the countries of the US, Mexico, and Canada. I think it's really important. As was said before, climate change is real, and we all need to be stewards of protecting our waters and our waterways in not only here in Arizona, but throughout the country. And we need to, develop policies that will do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas.
So I agree with what everyone has said, and we have to, in order to have a cleaner place for our future generations, we absolutely need to stop carbon emissions. And I've seen how many more days we have every year. The number of days that we're over 100 degrees has increased, and it's just getting worse. So the only way to stop that is to stop the carbon emissions. And one of the solutions that has been most successful is pricing carbon and returning that revenue to families and households. There are 11 states that are doing that right now, and I know that there's a group that I've talked to that are pushing that here for Arizona, and I will support that initiative to do that. I think that besides our carbon emissions, our water, we have a real water issue. We all know that. And I believe that it's just as important to make sure that we not only take care of our water shortage, but that we take care of our water quality. The quality of water is still not what it should be here in Pima County. And we need to change that. We need to make sure people are aware of what water they are drinking and using, and we need to make sure that we hold people accountable for making sure that, to make sure that our water is safe for all of us and for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford.
Thank you. I have become passionate about the environment. I've lived in the Tucson Mountains most of my life. I was on the Gates Pass Area Neighborhood Association for 18 years, protecting that area. And at this time, I just want to applaud Supervisor Richard Elias and Congressman Grijalva for their work in all the protection of the environment that they have done. It's really terrific. A few years ago, there was a bill to increase, allow the billboard companies to add more lights across the state. And I, again, being an environmentalist and being endorsed by the Sierra Club for all my elections, the bill was to allow the cities to have more. This was going to hurt the astronomer. We have a huge business with the astronomers coming in from all over the world. They make appointments to look at the sky years in advance. And I spoke against this bill, and the bill failed. I was really pleased about that. Or no, it failed, but with Governor Brewer vetoed it. When she went to veto it, she called my office and asked for my talking points on the reason that bill should not pass. I was very, very pleased about it. But we have to protect our dark skies, everything, and it's a really big issue. There are so many parts to it. So anyway, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, you have 30 seconds to add additional thoughts.
I want to help give voice to our native communities here in southern Arizona, the Tohono O'odham people, as well as the Pascua Yaqui Nation, whose nation sits in Legislative District 3. And I want to commend them for standing for environmental justice and for leading the fight in the efforts to oppose President Trump and Governor Ducey's plan to militarize our border, because our native community understands it best. Our borders are ours, are theirs, in all honesty. And what we need to do is make sure that we oppose any effort to get that border up in southern Arizona.
Thank you. This will be the last question for this round where every candidate responds. And Ms. Hernandez, you will start. What makes you stand out as a candidate compared to your opponents?
Yeah. So, I joined this race 4 months ago. And many people don't know that the reason for that was because I was still working. I was working running a healthcare coalition in our state, and as a young person running for office, it is very difficult to run for office full-time and have a full-time job. Those are the sacrifices you have to make in order to be able to run for office. So I decided to work as much as possible and ended up leaving my job so that I could be here today, so that I could run. But it wasn't about if I was going to run, it was about when. And after finishing my master's in public health and working in various organizations across town with many different issues, I decided that it was time for me to run now. We have 2 open seats in our district, and I felt that this was the perfect opportunity for me to represent the people of the community where I am from. I am not a part of an establishment or the machine that runs our community here. Everyone knows that by looking at the people who have endorsed me and the group of supporters that I have done this with my family and on my own. So I am not a part of an establishment. I'm doing this because I want to, and that is what sets me apart. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you. What sets me apart from my opponent is my experience. I have 20 years in policy making. I started first with my tribe and served my community in policy making and protecting the environment and working with TOSD to come up with policy that would help better serve our students. And I have been serving in the legislature this is my 12th year, not consecutively though, but I have for the last, I'm completing my 8th year. I know how things get done at the legislature. It is not easy to be in the minority. We have to work twice as hard. We have to really stand up on issues that are of our value, our community values. But also, I have learned to work and to find issues that I can work across the aisle, and I have. This session alone, I worked across the aisle to provide to do away with, again, I mentioned it earlier with Representative Cook, to do away with the restrictive work requirements that the Republicans have put on our community members in the Access program. Well, for a lot of our community members that qualify for Access and fulfilling those requirements are, they're really impossible because work cannot be found in many communities, especially in rural and Native American communities. They just cannot be found. So we were able to lift those requirements, and I will continue to work across the aisle on these issues that will help our community, and it will include the rest of our community to lift those really harsh requirements on Access.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford.
I am running because I am glad to be doing the work that I do. I'm termed out, but I wanted to go back to the House. Primarily, what motivated me was my constituents. They asked me, please don't quit, stay, we like you a lot. So that was a big, big factor in my deciding. As I said, I've served on appropriations for the 14 years, and I just want to continue. And as I said, I have a good rapport with constituents. I've gotten some wonderful endorsements for my work. Mayor Jonathan Rothschild endorsed me for the work that I have done to protect and help the city of Tucson many, many times on different votes. I've got the Fraternal Order of Police, the Arizona Nurses Association, Arizona Education Association, a wonderful variety of interest whose legislation has come before us and that we need to either protect or in some way advance their issues. So I want to continue. I'm really, as I said, I'm honored and I'm proud to serve the district of District 3. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cano.
Thank you so much for the question. I think what distinguishes me in this race is that I've said it time and time again since I announced on August 28th of last year that this campaign is not about me. It's about us. It's about Arizonans who are looking for solutions from our state lawmakers to do something different, to not continue the status quo of being at the mercy of Phoenix politicians and special interest groups who want to buy our district. That is what's happening in this race. I am supported by people right here in Southern Arizona, Congressman Grijalva, the entire city council, people from all walks of life, over 750 investors, because I don't just call them donors, I call them investors in our effort to change Arizona. Now, we must be doing something right when the folks in Phoenix want to attack Southern Arizona like they continue to do and get away with. And I'm here on the side of organized labor, of unions who've supported my candidacy, because I'm a union member. I'm endorsed by SEIU, CWA, AFL-CIO. And they've invested in us because they know from day one of starting this campaign that this campaign was about the issues. Anytime we promote our candidacy, no, I said our candidacy, I try my best to eliminate to eliminate me, because it's time for us to rise up with politicians who are only interested in their own political gain. That's politics of yesterday. Changing Arizona, investing in a brighter future, starts with getting rid of these archaic mindsets that don't benefit working families. So I stand here, supported by Southern Arizonans, and I ask for your support.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, you have 30 seconds to add additional thoughts. Did I? My apologies. Ms. Villegas, thank you for...
Skipped over me on purpose.
Never. Thank you.
So what sets me apart is that I have been a part of this community all my life. I have listened to this community, and I'm engaged in this community, and I work in this community. I know what the issues are. I know what the problems are that people are going through, or they're we may think that the recession is over, but there's still a lot of people that don't have jobs or don't have good paying jobs. When you have, in our district, we have most people are paying 59% of their income in rent, and that is not acceptable. We need to make changes that are going to bring our community up. And the way that, what distinguishes me from my opponent is not how we vote, because we are both Democrats and we're going to vote with our democratic values. What distinguishes us is how we get to that vote and how we get to the issues and the bills that are going to be sponsored, because I will look to you, my community, to see what are the issues, what is going on that I can fix for you. And I will engage with you, and I will have you engage with me. I will also have town halls, newsletters, forums. I will come back and talk to you. And that's not something that my opponent has done. In fact, I didn't even meet my opponent until I started running for office, and I've lived in her district all my life. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Hernandez, you have 30 seconds to add additional thoughts.
Yeah, I guess I could add, the endorsements as well. I'm very proud to also be endorsed by unions. The SMART union has endorsed me. Also, the Arizona Federation of Teachers, which I am very proud of as someone who's a product of public education. And, in reality, I think another thing that really sets me apart is the diverse experience in the work that I've done. I have done various, jobs that I've held, and they have all been in different areas. So that's what sets me apart.
Thank you. At this time, we will transition to the second part of the debate, where each candidate will receive a separate question with 1 minute to respond. Remember, you can still submit questions via note cards and direct them to specific candidates. And the first question is for Ms. Hernandez. And your question is, healthcare appears to be a central part of your campaign. Can you elaborate on what changes you would make and how you would accomplish these changes?
So of course, like I said, healthcare, because it's what I've been studying for the last 6.5 years of my life. As someone who has lived on access for the majority part of my life, my father and my mother benefiting from the Affordable Care Act, my father from Medicare. These are things that are very essential not only in my life, but around the people in my community. These are things that we really need to fight for and ensure that all people in our community have access not only just to quality, but also quality and affordable healthcare. It doesn't matter what your zip code is, where you're from. One of the things that, like I had mentioned before, is prevention. We would not be spending so much money on healthcare if we invested in prevention. And that is a logical thing. You would think people would start having these conversations, but they don't. And as someone who has a background in public health, those are the things that we actually look at and talk about all the time. Is how can we improve the healthcare outcomes of people in our community? What is it that we can do to provide them the necessary tools and whatever it is that they need, resources to succeed in life? Well, that starts with being healthy and having a healthy environment to live in. And one of the other things when it comes to healthcare is we have a shortage in doctors. I have many friends who are doctors here. I have many friends who are currently in medical school. We need to, first of all, fix our current education system before we can recruit more people to come here. But we also need to be able to fund research, not only at the University of Arizona, but in our public schools here in the state, to ensure that we are able to find solutions for the healthcare issues that we have. So those are the things that I want to work on. My main thing is to focus on prevention. So.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, your question, and we're doing 1 minute responses now. How will you help protect women in the workforce and workplace against sexual harassment if you are elected?
Well, I happened to be at the legislature on opening day of this session in January, where this was at the very forefront of the issue. It was the first issue that was discussed by the Speaker of the House, because we have a problem, not only in our legislature, but across boardrooms and in the offices of those at the very top in our private sector who need some more protection. Women need protection. And so what I look forward to doing is continuing the conversation, because a 80-page report that was issued in this legislature is not going to do service to be able to change the climate in our legislature or in our state. I was raised by strong women, and so I was taught to be respectful, to listen. And so in this fight, I think what's important is that male legislators take a step back and let women tell us how they want to see this legislature more safe, because that's their job. And what we will do as legislators is listen. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Quijero Bedford, can you speak to your belief on whether mass incarceration in Arizona is or is not a major issue?
That is a big item of interest to me, having sat again on the Appropriations Committee. But I would like to see some sentencing reform happen this year. Also, we don't need more prisons. I remember about 3 years ago, the governor wanted to add 3,000 more prison beds to the state. And my comment at that time was, so this is the way you're going to continue to add jobs to, build new prisons? It was like crazy. I was fortunate to have a tour of Florence Prison this past year, and I told the director every student in high school should see what it's like to live in a prison room, 8 by 5. Some of the more violent are chained to the lunch table, the dinner table, by their ankles. It was really quite a learning experience, and we don't need to be spending more money on prisons than we do on education. And
Thank
so
you.
we need a change in governor.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas, an audience member would like to know about your experience in the development of policies on topics like education and health and others.
I don't have direct experience in policymaking with education at the education level, but I can tell you that as a housing program manager for Pima County, I made many contributions to policy in educating our public on financial recovery and financial education and home buying. And I also had an opportunity to start a program for students where they're able to get, it's called Learn to Earn, where they're able to earn money for college along with their parents. So while I haven't had
Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Gonzalez, can you speak about some of the bills that you have specifically authored during your many years in the legislature?
Absolutely. As a educator and a classroom teacher, that's what really got me into this arena of policymaking, and so I one of the bills that I came back to the legislature after serving 20 years ago was 1070 was a big issue because it really discriminated against people who look like me. But really the one that I've been really doing is in sponsoring every year that I've been there was the ban on Mexican American studies, because that is really important. And we finally got a judge to agree that that law was unconstitutional and that we should get rid of that. But that is an important legislation that I still do.
Thank you. Ms. Hernandez, can you speak to how you propose to increase voter turnout in LD3?
Yes. So I've been working on voter turnout in my district since before I was even able to vote. I got involved in my district at the young age of 14. I've been involved since before it was LD3. And I've been doing what I can to ensure that the people in the community, especially in the Hispanic and Latino community, that those who don't speak English actually know what's going on. I have a really amazing group of interns, some who are here in the front right now, and they are also working extremely hard with our team to ensure that we elect not only myself, but other Democrats as well. We are going knocking on doors. I'm very proud to have knocked on over 6,000 doors in the short 4 months that I've been running, made thousands of phone calls. Everyone knows that in order to run a campaign, you have to be committed and willing to put in the work, and that's what I do. And I am very passionate about what I do. I was born to be an organizer. That's really all I've done and worked on. So that's what I'm doing to increase voter turnout.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, how do you plan on keeping in touch with your constituents while in office, and also so that they can ensure to keep you accountable?
Well, I think this is exactly why I'm running, is that when I am talking to folks don't know who their state representatives are. They are not connected to the issues. And I think it's, as Ms. Villegas mentioned, the byproduct of us just electing leaders who vote the right way and call it a day. What we have to start electing in this state are folks who are committed to engaging with people. You take a look at the kind of campaign we've been running. We're Facebook Living. We're sending out communications asking folks, what's your opinion? What do you think we need to move our state forward? And it's that kind of simple investment in conversations, meaningful conversations, that I think our legislature needs to now demand, because it's time for us to end this notion of being out of touch with our constituents.
Thank you. Ms. Quijero Bedford, can you speak to your position on comprehensive immigration reform and what role the legislature would play or not play in that?
Well, that is going to have to come from the federal government. It's tragic to see what has been happening with the children. Legislators were invited to see the Southwest Key facility the other day, and there were a number of us that felt that there was, a lot of there was a lot of effort to make it just look as wonderful as possible. But it was really heartbreaking to see these young children. They were in class when we were there. We weren't allowed to talk to them, and they told us about their feeding 3 times a day. They showed us their rooms, their play area. But the sad fact, while they were being well taken care of and likely living in a somewhat better life than from where they came, the sadness was that they were not with their parents.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas, what has been the most challenging part of this campaign for you?
Yeah, they're just exactly, there's just aren't enough hours in the day. It seems that if I'm not out there walking and talking to voters and talking to community, participating in events, I'm at home on the computer working on my website, because as a clean candidate, I had to make my own website. I've had to make my own campaign literature so far, and so it takes a lot of time when that's not really your profession. So I've learned how to use the tools, and that's really been the hardest, is not being able to participate in family functions sometimes, not being able to go to dinner with my husband as much as we used to. or to the movies. There's time is on hold right now until August 28th.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, can you speak to how you are encouraging people in minority groups to get registered and ready to vote?
Yes, we are really working hard, canvassing every day, and we're also working with the Pascoyaqui Nation and also with Tohono. These are communities of color and the Mexican American community in our district that has been disenfranchised by the voter system, and also, unfortunately, by even our own party. They have not really come out to do enough of voter registration and engaging our communities of color in Tucson. And but we are doing that now. We are working with Pascoyaqui tribe, and they're getting out the vote, registering people at events, and doing it on a individual basis. As we walk and canvass and talk to people, we're registering new people that are just turning 18 or who have never voted because they have been disenfranchised in the past.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hernandez, can you speak to your position in regards to health care around eligibility requirements of ARS 2936? So the question is about, would you support or not support the eligibility requirements of ARS 2936 to benefit more people?
You know, when it comes to benefiting more people, I'm all about supporting anything that will get more people on healthcare, because again, everyone needs to have healthcare. And you know, I don't know the specifics of what that looks like. I would have to see the actual language of it to be able to tell you exactly, but if it means more people having healthcare, then I am supportive of it, because as a public health professional, when you're actually in the program, that is your job and your duty to ensure that people are being able to access healthcare. So yes.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, many feel that we are approaching a water crisis in Arizona. Can you speak to how conservation and water recycling play a role in our strategy to avert this crisis and what you will do?
Absolutely, and I think District 3 is at the heart of our discussion to not only conserve our water, but to protect our water, because our district has faced enormous environmental pollution. And so the conversation about conserving water needs to be one that is focused on working with each jurisdiction and asking folks, what kind of water crisis do you want to see happen? Because it's happening already. And so what this legislature needs to stop doing is being in the pockets of corporate interests of people who only want to build, build, build without any regard for looking at conservation. And so you incentivize local jurisdictions in their efforts to educate the public and also to ensure that our water supply is 100 years or 200 years into the future. That's what we do, is make water policy a priority.
Thank you. Ms. Quijero Bedford, can you speak to your position on the Invest in Ed initiative that raises taxes on the wealthy in Arizona to fund public schools?
I think it's very important to see that this gets passed. As I said earlier, I have seen the cuts to education over the years, and I think that the teachers are going to be really out there and reminding people to get out and vote. That has been a big problem, people just not getting out to vote. And that's how a lot of this has happened. You know, and again, Ducey cutting $99 million from universities, and then the Attorney General Brnovich suing the Board of Regents, saying that that the regents were raising tuitions, but it was really the legislators. I sat on the appropriations and saw this. They cut the budget, or the governor cut the budget, and then they said to the schools and universities, what are you going to do now? Tell us how you're going to spend this money, when they had these huge cuts. So anyway, it's you know, hopefully the change will come with a new governor. I keep promoting the governor's race, but that's where it all starts, and that's where the bills get signed or not signed.
Thank you. Ms. Villegas, can you speak to resources that are being used to further your campaign? Any resources that you have that are part of your campaign?
Any resources that I have? I'm a clean elections candidate, so I'm very careful about what I do. I was very, very lucky to begin with. I worked really hard at the beginning to get my early money, and I maxed out on my early money with my family and my friends. And then I was able to get the 205s by March 30th. I think I was one of the first ones that made it to that so quickly. And so I've been working, and anytime that I have questions that I'm not sure about, I'm on the phone talking to Clean Elections to make sure that what I'm doing is legal. And so the resources that I have are resources that I've worked for, and I'm very glad that Clean Elections gave me this opportunity to run as a clean candidate.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, what has been the most challenging part of this campaign for you?
The most challenging part to this campaign has been, I think, time away from my family. It is a sacrifice to run for office. As many of you may know, I have 25 grandchildren, and I'm a very active grandmother, and so it has taken a toll on my relationship, but it'll get better. I think the hardest thing that I have faced this election is campaigning against my opponent, who is an establishment candidate, and that means that everybody has, and their brother is, that is the recognized people are supporting my opponent, and that I think that has been the hardest thing to work again, because.
Thank you. This will be the last round of questions for the candidates. Ms. Hernandez, what is your position on gun control?
So, as someone who has had several life situations that have encountered a weapon, it is something that is very extremely important and personal to me. Just this past week, the person who murdered my cousin was convicted. My brother is a survivor of the January 8th shooting, and my best friend Dorothy committed suicide with a gun. So gun violence in our community is serious. It is a public health issue, and it is plaguing our country. It is something that we really need to get serious about and continue to fight and not give up. We have to continue fighting and ensure that all kids, everyone, regardless of your religion, where you are practicing, that you're safe where you are, or if you're at a store, that you're safe. So, as someone who has experienced this, I'm very much for gun violence prevention.
Thank you. Mr. Cano, what are your views on the taxation of digital goods?
Thank you for the question. Any attempt to take away from our revenue is a bad situation for Arizona. What we need to stop doing is passing these special tax breaks and hurting our ability to invest in our state. And I think the effort to make digital taxation a reality is an exact example of what's wrong, is that we have to continue focusing on investing and in bringing in revenue. I believe that we can make Arizona's economy competitive, that we can support healthy workforce development, that we can stand with living wages, but it doesn't start by taking away revenue from our local jurisdictions who are already strapped. And the reality is that the governor and the legislature want to pass all of these exemptions on the backs of local jurisdictions. So what happens when you take away that money? You pay for it in your property taxes and in your bills every single day.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford, an audience member would like to know how you will hold school districts accountable so they will give teachers the raises that the voters approved as opposed to the money being spent on other interests.
Well, that's a good question, because my feeling right now is that if we do not elect, if Governor Ducey gets reelected, I feel that he is going to back out on his promise to do the 20% teacher raises. So the idea is we need to have a Democratic governor who is going to support the teachers. Also wanted to just point out, so many of the public does not realize that the private schools and charter schools are for profit. They are using our state money to have their schools, and then they can sell them, and they don't have to return that money. They are really bad. They are under scrutiny right now by the Arizona Republic because of all the abuses that they are doing with the money. They don't have the same reporting requirements the public schools do. So that is a big, big issue that I hope gets resolved because of this next election.
Thank you.
Next election.
Ms. Villegas, what does it take to be successful as a state legislator?
To be successful, you have first, after you're elected, you have to make a commitment to be there to learn the processes and be there and listen and be a part of your community and come back to your community, come back and be engaged with your community so that you are the voice. I will be a voice for my community. I will speak for you. I'm not there to speak for myself. I want to represent you, and that is what I intend to do. And that's what I believe a legislator should do. We're not there to just vote and to be a loner at the state capitol. We're there to build relationships at home, and then you build relationships at the Capitol to get things done.
Thank you. Ms. Gonzalez, what is your position on the role of labor unions in Arizona?
My position on labor unions in Arizona is that they are an important part of our fabric that really work to provide and have really secure a lot of workers' rights for our workers in Arizona, from health care benefits to safety issues. They have really fought hard, and they not only support their all of these resolutions that they have helped to develop are not just for union members, union paying members, but they are really for all workers in Arizona. So I think that they are important factor in our community, and we need to respect them. We need to provide them a place to be able to work and to do their work without interference from the government.
Thank you. We're going to move on to 1-minute closing statements. Ms. Hernandez, can you give your 1-minute closing statement, please?
Yes. So again, my name is Alma Hernandez. I'm very proud to be a product of the Sunnyside School District from the community that I was born and raised in, where I currently still live. And I just want to remind you all that this This campaign in this district is determined in our primary. We don't have general opponents. So it is your opportunity now to decide in this primary who your representatives will be. I hope that I can count on your support. As someone who has been let down by the system many times, I will continue to fight the same way that I have continued to navigate through that system that has failed me, and I will continue and be your voice in the state capitol. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Cano.
Thank you so much. I want to start off by thanking the Clean Elections Committee for hosting tonight's discussion. Thank you to the 75 Southern Arizonans who joined us tonight. I'm Andres Cano. I'm a proud progressive Democrat, and I'm one of your candidates for the State House. I was born and raised in this district. I believe in what my mom told me when she told me that what I had to do to get ahead in this life was to get a public education and to keep going and to have hope for a better tomorrow. Hope for a better Arizona includes my candidacy for office. I'm 26 years old, I'm young, I'm Latino, and I'm a member of the LGBT community. I'm running because the folks in Phoenix don't look like me. And so my candidacy is a direct conversation with the folks in Phoenix who want to buy our district to say our seat at the decision-making table is right around the corner. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Cajero Bedford.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it. I'm running because one of the main reasons is because I'm glad to be doing the work that I do. It's a family tradition, public service. Some of you may remember my mother, Carmen Cajero, who served for 24 years, and then she succeeded my father, who died in office. He was in office for 5 years. So Cajero has served in the legislature for 45 years now. I'm very proud of that. We're dedicated to public service. It's not easy to have to travel to Phoenix all the time for work, but as I said, I have a good rapport with constituents. I visit with them, I attend events that they sponsor, listen to their concerns, email. I communicate with them as much as possible. So I want to continue. There's so much passion with so many of these issues, women's rights, universal background checks, funding properly for children that are, might be in need, in foster care.
Ms. Villegas.
Thank you. Thank you again for coming, everyone. I just want to say that as I started, my work and life experience has prepared me for this job. I've talked about my work experience, but in my life experiences, I'm a breast cancer survivor. My family has the BRCA1 genetic mutation, and when I found out that I had cancer, I didn't sit still. When I found out I had the mutation, I went into action. And that's the type of person I am. I don't just sit back and go through the process. I went out there and I started educating Latina women on their risks, knowing their family history, and talking about prevention. When I work with historic preservation, I do the same thing. When I take it a step further in everything that I do, and this job I will take a step further as well. Thank you very much.
Ms. Gonzalez.
I would like to thank everybody for being here tonight. But there was a question that I wish I would have gotten. It was about protecting women's rights. We have an issue in America and in Arizona, and at the legislature, we ousted former Representative Shooter because of his allegation or his things about women and what he said and how he abused women. And right now we have I am really concerned that the Tucson community is not talking about the congressman that we have that signed, paid a young lady almost $60,000 of our hard-earned money, and then signed a disclosure agreement to not discuss why she received money for a 3 months job. I think it is important, and us women need to stand out and talk about this issue and really discuss it and stop the mayhem that's having with the Me Too movement. And I really would like
Thank
to
you.
continue this discussion with whoever would like to talk to me about it.
Thank you. To our candidates, we thank you so much for participating in our forum. And to our audience members, we thank all of you who took time to come and inform yourselves before voting. We encourage you to visit www.azcleanelections.gov/voter dashboard for a customized experience and to find information on the primary election, the candidates, the issues, and to view this debate on demand. It's kind of like what you're seeing here. This is the site, so we encourage you to visit that. And also, please fill out the debate evaluation form that you received and give that to one of our volunteers. Your feedback is really important to the commission and will help improve future debates. Thank you all for coming tonight, and you're welcome to stay and speak directly with the candidates. Good evening.